All right, and we are live. It is another great day in Cribl TV. This is Ed Bailey, and I'm thrilled to be here today with James Curtis. And James has wrote a book, and we're going to talk about James's book and a little bit what James sees is going to happen in 2024. So, how you doing today, James? Everything going all right?
Yeah, going pretty good. How about you, Ed?
Not bad. Weather has gone from on the East Coast has gone from cold and miserable to wet and miserable. So, we've had some change, and some things stay the same.
There you go. Yeah, pretty much the same here on the West Coast too.
Aren't you in Portland?
Sacramento.
Sacramento. Okay, yeah. Y'all are gonna get a lot of rain come up.
Yep. Yeah, it's very odd. Normally it's just completely dry.
Yeah, there you go.
Weird couple of years.
So, James, you have been busy lately. Just want to share with everyone, like your book. I mean, let's see if we can get past. There we go. There we go. Yay! James wrote himself a book about Cribl Stream Fundamentals. I really appreciate it. So, tell me a little bit. What led you to write a book?
Yeah. So, really, how that ended up happening is I was going through the Cribl Stream Fundamentals certification. I got asked to give some feedback when they first put that out. So I ended up writing up a bunch of notes, and before I knew it, I was like, "Oh, this is a lot." So I was like, and then I just kept organizing, kind of going, and it kind of turned into a book. So yeah, just kind of happened by accident.
Who do you think's the ideal person? What kind of Cribl user do you think your book would help the most?
A couple different users. So it's going to be like your engineers, Splunk or Elastic engineers, people trying to get data into their SIM or data into their systems of analysis. And very much so for this particular one, people who are trying to communicate to like their C-suite or C-levels, what Cribl is, kind of how it works, some of the benefits of it. That's a very light primer on kind of what it does and some of the ways it might help.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful, especially for people who are new to Cribl, because it's just hard. You're learning a new tool and trying to get into it, and having some help from something like this, I think could be very, very helpful. So, what do you think's next? Are you going to write a part 2, or are you going to get into cookbooks? I mean, what do you think you're going to do next?
Yeah, so definitely next, I'm going to work on Cribl Stream or Cribl administration. So get a little bit heavier into managing worker nodes, doing like distributed fleets and kind of some of the more practical uses. Stepping a little bit away from communicating to management, how you might introduce Cribl to them, or kind of the basics of how it is, and get a little bit more hands-on with some of the specifics of how to set up Cribl and get things going.
That's great. I really think, especially engineers typically struggle with selling projects. Getting a project funded, frankly, I think is way harder than the technical aspects that you're solving. And so guidelines, pointers there, I think would be particularly well received. Do you think in your book you maybe write about resiliency in HA? Because I think that's another it can be very complicated concepts for people who are new to this space to absorb and also implement.
Yep. Yeah, I would like to get in with the next one some very specifics of how to get set up using like Docker deployments and stuff like that. I touched on it very lightly in this first one, but I want to get a little bit more in there with like some sample scripts of how to get cluster spun up on Docker, stuff like that. How many nodes you should have, some guidance around like sizing and things like that.
Yeah, I think sizing is another one, because I think it takes some experience. Because I think one of the biggest things I see is you'll size for what you need right now, but you don't think about if something goes wrong. If I go to 2x, what's going to happen? If I'm doing a maintenance, like if you have 2 nodes in your pool, for example, and you take one down, you're now at 50% capacity, where 3 nodes is typically be a more resilient setup.
Yep. So or even places like if you're an accountant firm or like financial, things are going to spike at certain times of the year, right?
Exactly. Where spikes you'll see is there 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. People roll in and they log in all at one time.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you got to account for that, and that's a huge issue from a sizing. And so I think book like from a practitioner like yourself, I think would be super helpful. because there's just things you just don't think about unless you have some experience. And unfortunately, it's the experience usually because you screwed it up and then you learned.
Exactly.
At least that's how I got my experience. Messed up a lot and tried to learn from it.
Yep. Generally, it's definitely the one you'll remember the most.
Exactly. Exactly. So, and what about maybe use case books? I see a lot of times people will write like a cookbook series or something like that that are use case based and give you, here's step 1 through 100 of how to solve it. Is that something you're interested in too?
Yeah, definitely be interested in doing some sort of cookbook, like different types of data, O365, just very common sources that you might go through, how you might approach it, um, different ways to pull in, because a lot of different sources, there's more than one way to get the data in. So it'd be cool to kind of approach multiple different ways. Win event log, for example, you can have win event forwarders.
Right.
There's some kind of good practice around when you would want to use WEF versus when it starts to get a little bit more unrealistic in very large environments, things like that.
Yeah. WEF is another good example. Just understand the pros and cons, the ramifications of your choices. Because I think that's another thing where you can just kind of help people with your own experience and not have to create your own. Because I've seen WEF, especially for endpoint laptops, and when you take them home and go to hibernation and go to sleep and create all sorts of problems. So I think that's a great way to look at it.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And then I think end goal for me with this kind of series is I can get these, several books, series of books, and then I'd like to collapse them all or condense them all into one big sort of Cribl Bible, if you will.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So where is your book available? I know I got mine on Amazon.com, but is that the only place it's available or anywhere else?
Yep. Right now it's Amazon.com. I'm working on getting it in Barnes and Noble. So
Nice.
it should be up there within sometime in February, probably.
That's really cool. What about Kindle? Is it available on Kindle?
Yep. Yeah, it's available on Kindle. So if you're a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, you can just go out there and get it and download it for free as part of your subscription. And put it at the lowest price that I could on Kindle, just because I wanted to be able to get out to people and be able to have people order it as much as they wanted to.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So we have a question from the audience. So Logan is asking, what was the process you took for writing this book? How did you go through picking out what would you include in the content? It's something really cool to publish your own book, and congrats on the achievement.
Yeah, thank you, Logan. I appreciate that. As far as what I used to include, I kind of went along with the Cribl Stream or Cribl Fundamentals certification. So I kind of went along with the idea of if I'm going to take this certification, what are some of the base knowledge that I would need to get through this? You guys already do a bang up job of having the knowledge and having everything you need there on that. But some people like to have like a physical thing in front of them they can read, and it's just different ways of learning things. So I wanted to condense this all down in there and get it on there. Some of the things that I had to learn, formatting in Word is where I originally started out. Not a great path to go down, which I quickly found out. So I did that, and I had an ebook on a website, and I had that up there for several months. And then I found a program called LaTeX. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. If you've done any sort of academia, you probably have.
Oh yeah, that is not new. Put it that way.
Yeah, it's been around a long time. But it really opens up a bunch of different formatting options as far as like just automated table of contents, getting your margins right, stuff like that. So I ended up learning LaTeX for the purpose specifically of doing this book. And that let me, make sure that I could get everything that I needed for Kindle. It's called KDP. It's Kindle Direct Publishers through Amazon, and make sure that it fit within all their guidelines of what they needed for that.
I think it's a brilliant concept, especially because you can something that even 10 years ago was probably impossible, where you could publish a book with a small run and actually have a physical book. And so I mean,
Yep.
it's really amazing.
Yeah, and speaking of things that were impossible, I know a little bit of Photoshop, but I'm not an expert at Photoshop, right? So it's like,
Right.
how do you get, or how do I, as just a layman, how do I get like a cover art for my book? I struggled with that for a bit, and then I ended up going to ChatGPT and had it generate this abstract art. So there's probably 2 or 3 lucky people who got it with the default thing that KDB spits out, and then I changed it quickly after that.
That's a good idea, because I think that's something you always have to worry about is, you got to find something that no one has a right to or a copyright, and that's not trivial, or you got to pay for it. So it's a great idea.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Very, very cool. Well, so I look forward to your next book. I really appreciated reading it. Got great feedback. I know several of the Cribl salespeople have bought the book to give out to their customers. So, I think it's a great thing you did, and congratulations.
Yeah,
So just
thank
want
you.
to shift a little bit. So, you're you work in security. You got a lot of experience. I mean, I definitely call you an expert. What do you see right now as what are security practitioners looking at in 2024? What are the big challenges? What do you see that's out there that's going to be what's going to be a thing?
Yep. Yeah, I think for me, something that I'm kind of focused on and worried about and really hyper focused on is AI in cybersecurity. A couple different reasons. I think it's really going to speed up the number of attacks you see because you're going to be able to get people who weren't as great at writing code. They're going to be able to get Python written for them, for example. So they might know some of the underlying technologies behind it, but they might not have been able to write that code before, or they might not be able to write it as fast.
Right.
Or maybe they had some code they had CrowdStrike's figured out how to block it, just for an example. So they can feed it into some of these other purpose-built AIs that they've gotten going and say, hey, natural language, this is being blocked now. Give me some ideas of how I can get around this. And that's definitely going to be an issue. And that cuts both ways. So it's going to be an issue for us as defenders, but it's also going to be an issue for attackers, since you're going to see a lot more AI-enabled detections and stuff like that. I think it's been in a lot of security products for a while, but it's been kind of one of those things where it's been a buzzword until recently, where AI was kind of just this word that they threw out. It's like, we got a couple Python scripts that like sort some stuff.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, there's always an elements of AI, and in various things. It just didn't necessarily get as much attention. So what parts of security? So do you think tool usability, process, procedure? I mean, automating. What call it, like Anton called it. Where you're going to expand left and give your SOC a hand up with AI. I mean, where do you think you're going to start seeing value first?
Yeah, I think you're going to start seeing a lot of value around several different things, but one of them is going to be like sentiment inside emails. So you can kind of, if you can take all your emails, you can feed them through this machine, and it can say, this is the type of sentiment, or this is, the goal of this person writing this. So if you start getting at being able to analyze a bunch of emails for like what the actual goal is that they're sending, okay, the true goal that this person is doing is they're trying to get them to click this link for this reason that doesn't make sense, and it comes from the sender that it wouldn't make sense to come up from. So right now, that is something that's a very manual process for the most part. But I think you're going to start seeing a lot more coming out where it's going to be able to feed through and get sentiment and emails. I think we're going to get a lot more in the way of like geolocation data. So something pops up and it's happening in strange places. I think that's going to be able to be detected faster. Different things like that. So yeah, just the ability to detect things, I think, is just going to get a lot stronger because we're not relying just on our minds as much.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit of a struggle. I think there's so much LLMs, especially, seem to be very error prone. So that's where from what I'm seeing is I think AI is going to be initially help people use tools better. Because you think about the infinite variability of a detection, where in terms of write a better regex, write better code, use a tool better, I think that AI prompts are going to be a lot more effective there than they are where, help you write a better detection, but not necessarily write the detection for you, if that makes any sense.
Yep. No, that does make sense. I think what we're going to see is a bunch of niche down tools.
Yes.
So very specific AI functions for very specific things.
Yep. I think it'll expand. I've already seen, so one person I'm real familiar with is the what he's doing with his team is he's using LLMs to help his SOC follow procedures better. So for example, you can have a not as experienced analyst take a case and use an LLM to prompt them through, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you go to this link? Did you go to this link? So that way they have a more consistent troubleshooting experience. And that way they're, just trying to bring some consistency and help a less experienced person be more consistent.
Yep. No, definitely things like that. Like if you can feed all your playbooks into an AI, and then you can just inexperienced analyst can ask a question and it can comb through those playbooks, stuff like that.
Yeah. So George has a great question. So do you think AI will replace SOAR or augment SOAR?
I think it'll augment SOAR. I think it's going to kind of attach onto the side.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's gonna. It's kind of two different things, and you might end up seeing like AI SOAR products, but really SOAR is just like the security automation around it. AI is just going to be like what is enabling or what is allowing SOAR to happen.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things I see especially is teams will spend a lot of money on a SOAR, but they won't hire private programmers to build playbooks. And so I think that's one thing where AI can do is help guide you through writing an effective playbook. So think about, define your use case, but then step through the processes of, I want to put an automatic block on the firewall. Here's the rules. Here's the validation procedures. Here's the rollback procedures, and have AI help you write better automation code, because that's something that takes some experience, and that can be difficult to do, especially if you think, I can retrain one of my SOC analysts who's not an automation person, and help get more, just help lift up the people you have.
Yep. Yeah. Anything that's very procedural or cut and dry, I think we're going to go a long way on that. Anything that gets very nuanced or gray area, I think is going to take quite a bit longer. So you start getting into like compliance frameworks and
Exactly.
stuff like that. Like some of that is step by step. Okay, you need to be compliant with this, yada yada yada. But some of that, when you get into illegal things, right now AIs have a tendency to hallucinate,
Yes.
which is not a good thing when you want to be compliant.
Yeah, and that's the error proneness that being 80% right for writing a detection, for example, I don't think is not going to work. And so you need that back checking, and that's where I think initially help people do better. I think another good. I mean, I remember never forget guys asking me about we're gonna get a SOAR, and I was like, what kind of people should we hire to run the SOAR? Should we get security people? And I was like, no, you should go get some puppet programmers, because they're going to know how to write automation.
Yep.
And so, but it's just, but it's, staffing is a huge issue. And so I think that is something that, and then like George just, commented, SIM staffing as well. And so I think those are all, all really good places. And, but I think it just takes some time.
Yep. I think with AI also doing some of the more menial tasks, as we go the next 2-3 years, we're going to have to get to the point where we see a lot more layering of skill sets. So you might need a security person who is also a puppet person to be able to get that job done.
But I think that thing is to help that security person be that puppet person. Person needs help, because that's the thing is like at least I haven't seen anyone in the SOC lately that has a lot of free time to learn a completely new skill set.
Yeah, or along the same vein, partnering those people up. So sidecarding some teams where they're kind of running together. I think we're going to see a lot of, just because there's going to be so much that you have to learn and so much knowledge that not a single person can actually realistically get all of that in their head.
Yeah, that's where I think like smart chatbots have been a thing on the service management space for years. They all uniformly suck. And I think this is something that this is something where you can get a lot better and learn. Especially, I think you need more private instances of LLMs, because I think that's a huge issue. And then I'm concerned about with security is leaking very proprietary information if you're trying to use public LLMs. I mean, you've already seen it. Like the LLMs are sucking up all sorts of proprietary and sensitive information, and you got to be careful it's not your information too.
Yeah, and then we've also got some of the lawsuits circling around places like OpenAI.
And they should be. They're stealing other people's content. I mean, just it's pretty bold to go steal someone's output and call it yours, and then say, hey, not me. So those are things you got to be careful about.
Yep, absolutely. And personally, I think it's going to come to a reckoning where they're just going to have to change copyright law. I think to be with this new reality. So they're either going to have to say these are not allowed, these are allowed, but they're going to have to come up with something.
Yeah, I mean, more often than not, OpenAI is going to like the New York Times suit that just kicked off. They're going to pay them off. I mean, it's just what it is. Apparently, New York Times made an offer, and OpenAI just said no. And that's the thing.
OpenAI was playing ball with some of the other people. I think they just gave them smaller offers in the New York Times.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing from an intellectual property standpoint. It's pretty cut dry. I mean, you're using someone else's output, and you're deriving value, and you're selling it. And so there's really no defense there. And so that's the thing, is they're gonna have to work something out. And I think you're right. Congress is going to have to modernize copyright law where the content producer is still compensated, but there's less friction in how it's done. Because imagine like your OpenAI, and you have to pay off every single content producer, and with a different contract over and over again. That's a lot of burden.
Yeah, there's going to have to be something if OpenAI continues to operate in that. There's going to have to be some sort of Getty like photos type deal in the middle that just aggregates all of this.
Getty is already going after him because of the image creation. That's going to create some new law because it's because of the derivative work nature of it. So that's going to be a whole other thing.
Yeah, image creation, I don't think we're getting away from. I mean, it's baked into Photoshop at this point.
Oh yeah, it's definitely. So it's just opened up all sorts of new fronts. But I'm excited because I see so many places where AI could help, because I meet with teams all the time, and they're just overwhelmed, and they can't get beyond the day-to-day just nonsense in order to innovate. And I see like guy we're meeting with last week, and he's so smart. But he's, because of all the just drudgery of the daily drudgery that's to deal with, you want to put that smart guy right into better detection, not spending all this time figuring out why his data sources have failed.
Yep, or convincing management to do X thing.
Totally. Or staffing a project correctly, staffing like George is mentioning, staffing your tools. And so and that's the thing is that if you're going to have to fill those gaps somehow. So either you're going to accept the risk of having the staffing gaps, or something like AI is going to help you fill those gaps. It's one or the other.
Yep. Yeah. SOAR is a tough one. I've actually seen more than one SOAR project just die.
I've seen many SOAR projects. I would say most SOAR projects where it's just it's there. But in terms of being and really impactful, the idea, like you get the sales rep comes and says, yes, you can have it shut down an attack in seconds. And it hardly ever gets to that point where, we're going to let the SOAR, we're going to let the SOAR product put a block in the fire in our production firewall in the middle of the day and automate that. That's not something most enterprises are ready for.
Yep. Or even if they're ready to allow it to make that decision on their behalf, just the expertise that they need to get that done.
Exactly.
I've seen huge corporations. I've seen Fortune 50s shut it down because they couldn't make it happen. So
yeah, exactly. There's just so many things to deal with, and also just the risk of, hey, we just took down our firewall because we made a mistake, and so, and that's exactly what could happen. But I think and those are the kind of things that I think that it just you got to have the innovation and the talent, because it's definitely there. I've seen it work. So much of it's leadership and having the right talent in place.
Yep. And George just mentioned that using AI sort of as a detection for when you're missing logs or when logs are falling off, stuff like that. Definitely.
Absolutely. And that's something that we're going to be seeing in my favorite product relatively soon. And so, and that's something that we do. I mean, I've helped some teams that data from Stream into something like an Elastic or Splunk, and then do anomaly detection there to understand when it's falling off as well. Because the hardest thing is not when it falls off. The hardest thing is when it goes from, say, 1,000 events per second to 1 event per second, because it's still there. It's just less.
Yeah. Or it's normal for it to go to 1 event per second, but how do I know for sure if that's normal? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Steve Colpin solved that on my last job by using anomaly detection, where he built up a baseline over 6 months to understand, what's the typical behavior on this day and this hour, and do a comparison. And that was really interesting how we're able to do that, and then take that same type of behavior, because I think that's critical. I think behavior is the best way to detect changes of behavior, the best way to detect issues. Because think about all the different ways there's to hide something, to hide a binary, to hide a command, but the fundamental behavior has changed. There's no hiding that.
Yep,
I mean,
absolutely.
of course, if you can detect it.
Yeah, so that actually reminds me, like UAB. Um, I could see a huge potential for AI and user behavior. Like, oh, this user usually does this, and right now they're just doing that based off set rules.
Mhm.
But if they have the ability to automatically just find those behaviors based off what the AI thinks the behaviors are,
Right.
not based off somebody having the need to go in there and kind of intrinsically or hard code uh, look for these behaviors because I say those are the behaviors you should look for.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's critical, because it's just that's how you find with that unknown unknowns. I mean, this is something that I've always been struck by, is that observability concepts have been on the ops side forever, but there's just that concept of finding, things I don't know about, is just not really taken hold of like I'd have liked to have seen in the security side. And I think that just the broadly looking for, but just think about the concept. See, of 50,000 people in your company, so you got 50,000 laptops. They're all doing something where you're tracking everyone and every process and everyone's behavior, looking for deviations. That is a non-trivial technical challenge.
Yep, absolutely.
But I think that is something that's worth spending a lot of time on, because imagine if you could, you're identifying a process on 50,000 laptops, and you're watching it, and you see that it's doing something different, and now that you can get that kind of insight into behavior that you wouldn't ordinarily have.
Yep. And not only is like that one machine doing something different, but hey, these 10 machines in this subset, this subsidiary, these 10 machines in this subsidiary are doing something different.
Yeah, I had a really talented detection engineer show me. He basically created a playback of one endpoint got compromised, and then you saw the lateral movement of three got compromised, and then it went to six, and it was just like looked like a damn virus. And I was like, "Yep, there we go." It's like it was something else.
Yeah, I could see that too. As far as like lateral movement, right now we don't have an. You could write some sort of detection, like you said, if you were some sort of really just amazing detection engineer, you could write some sort of detection where you could see that lateral movement. But if you had the ability to visually map out, here's this file or here's this executable that just hit 1,000 machines, and that is not normal behavior unless we know it's a deployment. So feed in all your deployments that you know are going on into this AI. Um, this is something that's being deployed that should not be deployed.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, absolutely. It's something we did in the last gig, just something very similar, where we're looking for, here's what a standard system looks like, and we're looking for deviations off that. And the thing that kind of, when we ended up abandoning the project, because there wasn't enough commonality on the endpoints, where you would expect everything's managed the same, but you find out absolutely not. And so
yep,
that was very difficult to do, to have that. And I think that's another thing, because AI, a focused AI model could really help there.
absolutely. Yeah, just the ability to be able to recognize those patterns across the entire environment,
Yep.
where I'm just recognizing patterns that I can see, that I happen to be surface to me.
Right. Yeah, I think those are great ideas. So outside of AI, what do you think are going to be the big challenges for security teams going into 2024?
Just increased phishing. I think we're just going to keep seeing more and more phishing attacks. I honestly don't know how. It's been the biggest problem, probably in cybersecurity for a while. Just the sheer number of phishing emails you get, but they're getting better and better because of AI. So the ability to detect, for example, if ethical reporting, like you get an ethical reported email in, was that a human that wrote
Right.
that? Did some robot somewhere write this, and they're just blasting this out to a bunch of people, and they're hoping to get $1,000 every time they do. So I think the ability to know what's real and what's not real is going to be a big problem.
And this is where hygiene is so important. So I take this to, outside of emails to DNS, but the idea is that you have to validate exactly where this email is coming from and be able to say, okay, this is internal. This is from our system. This is from a known system that we worked with before. This is from a system that we've never seen before. And I think also it's important to be more aggressive. I'm a huge fan of using nod lists, newly observed domains, where you're just dropping them. If this domain's a day old, there is zero chance this is legitimate. And
Yep.
so, and just drop it, because I see all the time, really sophisticated emails that are not legitimate. And so you need that hygiene of, understanding. Your systems essentially give you prompts to say, this doesn't look right. This is from a system that our system's never seen before. DNS, and also more enforcement of email security, because I think those are just massive problems.
Yep. I saw recently, and I can't remember who had it or which product it was, but they had the ability to check not just for your domain, but domains that were really close to it. So if you have like abc.com, you could have abd.com, and that one single letter, it'll just block it. Because
Right. And that's exactly what I'm saying, is that, because like your email system knows, okay, we get X many emails. Here's the domains we've seen that we know are legitimate, and here's the ones that are not. And either you tag them or put them in a spam folder or something. But you have to give people prompts, because you no longer can rely upon the average person to be able to look at an email and say, that's not right, because like the issue with English is not there. Bad sentences or bad images or something, or just, you don't have those prompts anymore, and it's too easy to hide the URL.
Yep. Yeah, we're starting to see less and less of this is an obvious fish, and more it's starting to be more and more from what I can see. Oh, I really have to dig into this email to find out if it's legitimate or not.
Right,
And I
and the
can't
thing is,
expect users to know that.
exactly, the average user is just not going to do that. And so I think that's important. It's incumbent on security teams to give prompts. And frankly, it's better to miss an email than to have something, and I think that you can manage your risks, appropriately there, but you just can't rely upon someone to eyeball it and say, this is bad and this is good.
Yep, absolutely.
So George has a question. Cribl steers on realistic management expectations. So George, one of the things that I spend a lot of time doing is, and I call it, I always want to disappoint people early to make sure we understand what we can do, what we can't do. And one of the also talk about a managed pace, because you rarely see any kind of implementation of any technology that's going to solve all your problems the first time around. So we let a roadmap of small wins that equal big wins. And so just try to set those expectations early on, because just no one is benefited by creating unrealistic magical expectations. I think it's very important to be realistic and upfront and transparent about what, and this is for any vendor, what you can and can't do. So James, you're a customer. What do you think? I mean, how do you want vendors to set expectations for engagements?
I think it's pretty much what you said. Similar to how, as a manager, I'll set SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. That's very important that a vendor does that. You're going to tell me, these are the 3 or 4 things we're going to work on. We believe we're going to be able to work on them this quarter. Very specific. All right, we can do this. This is realistic. And also not just because they say so. Do you have the staff to do this?
Yeah, it's very important. I was just helping a company. They're getting ready to implement application logging for the first time, and so they're talking about, here's our first of, we're going to tackle 60 applications in the first year. I gave them a little advice that, like, I had to go through this quite some time ago in my last company. The thing I learned is that when you're starting a new process, a new function, things don't go well. You have to it takes time to optimize your process. And I was like, if I'm you, I'm planning on 30 as what I'm committing to. And in order to give yourself the room to optimize your process, and your stretch goals are 60, because you as you said, you've got to be realistic. You've got to account for staffing. You got to account for problems. And like these guys I was talking to, they're all on call. I was like, if you're all on call, how are you going to meet these goals? You have a couple of bad weeks and it throws off your whole schedule.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah, it is something else. It really is. Things are changing. So anything else you want to share? What do you think from what are your goals? I mean, what are you looking for? What are you looking to accomplish this year?
Yeah, so this year, I'm looking at least cranking out that Cribl administration book, going through kind of some of the different trainings that you guys have. Yeah, really just continue trucking along. I really like writing the articles that I've been writing,
Nice.
sharing those with people. It's just kind of been another creative outlet for me, because I'm always so technical. It's nice to be able to go out there and share ideas and talk with other people when I really don't always have that chance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I totally get it. I'm glad you have that. So, want to wrap up a little bit. I want to thank George for all your questions. Hey, George, want you to be on every live stream and ask some questions. We really appreciate the engagement. Pork, thank you. Appreciate you being here. And Logan, thank you very much. Appreciate your question. And James, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you writing the book. I mean, it's just something we've all really enjoyed taking a look at. The salespeople are, giving to their customers, and so just, it's a great effort, and congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. And definitely, if anybody has any feedback on the book, anything they notice they want corrected, see stuff like that, let me know. I'm on LinkedIn. You can also get to me at if you go to datajames.com. Still working on the SSL cert on that, but you'll see content related to any books I put out,
Nice.
any of my articles on there, stuff like that.
Yeah, you think you're going to spin up a Discord or anything like that?
Yeah, I've got on that page, you'll see Discord's coming soon. So once I get that spun up, you'll see that as there. So anything I create or anything I put out, you'll be able to see on that.
All right. That sounds great. Hey, hope you'll come back on the live stream soon and enrich us with what your experiences are, and we'll be in touch. So
Yeah,
take care of yourself. Have a great day.
perfect. Thanks for having me.
All right, for everyone out there, we really appreciate y'all's time. Please take a look at the Cribl community, cribl.io/community. Join our Slack community. I believe we're hitting about 6,500 strong. Lots of people there who have the same struggles, who want to help you solve your data challenges and observability and security. Thank you and have a good day.